Afternoon, councillors. Afternoon, councillors and staff. Thank you very much for your attendance, and to the public that are here. Welcome to each and every one of you. Just a reminder, we are online and we welcome those that may be listening online, and we encourage people here in the council chambers to keep your phones off if you possibly can, because it can interfere with our recording. I just want to start with a minute's silence. As you're all aware, that Ted Sands passed away on Monday. He was a councillor for 16 years at the council, and he was very passionate about his work and very committed to his work, and he had a lot of contribution to make to our beautiful city as well, and also to my life. And I remember sitting down the back when I first got on council, sitting right down the back where Alan is now, next to Councillor Sands at the time, or Alderman Sands I should say, and he did give me some good advice at the time too, so that was always good to have. So just have a minute's silence now to remember his life and family. Thank you very much, councillors, and can I at this time too pass on councillors' condolences to Anne and his family, extended family, and we thank Anne and the family for the time they allowed him to serve on our council as well. Please be seated, thank you. So we move on to declaration of interest. Any declaration of interest? No. Confirmation of the minutes. Somebody happy to move the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of March. Move Councillor Spencer, seconded Councillor Harris. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is all councillors present. We have no deputations or no petitions. We do have a community report from Mr Mohammed Ordagan, Chief Executive Officer from Variety, the Children's Charity. So welcome to you, Mohammed.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon to everyone around the room, and thank you so much for the opportunity to have me. My name is Mohammed Aldagam, and Mayor, you've done a fantastic job in pronouncing my last name, so congratulations. I'm the CEO of Variety, the Children's Charity. We're based in Hobart and we operate across the state. Our main charter is to support children who fall through the gaps because of no fault of theirs. Whether they are sick, disadvantaged or living with disability, would like to be there to support them. Potentially, some of you might know us through TASBASH, and we starting TASBASH from Launceston in October this year again, so we're looking forward to that. As you can imagine, Variety has a very wide charter in terms of what we do and how we do things. So considering the limited time allowed to me for me today, I'd like to invest that time to talk about our efforts and work around inclusive play and universal design. So one of the biggest things that Variety does is work with organisations, councils, schools, but also community groups to promote play. And really, in a nutshell, we want to see kids be kids, enjoy life, regardless of their ability or location. We identified inclusive play as a major area we would want to invest in and look at expanding. We don't work in advocacy space, clearly. However, we like promoting inclusive space. And although we are motivated and triggered by the need for our children, however, inclusive playgrounds and inclusive open spaces are typically intergenerational as well. So by virtue of accommodating for the needs of our children, we're actually expanding that inclusion across the different age groups and different needs. Typically, so by doing through our work in the last particularly 2 years, and despite COVID, which again highlighted the need for having an inclusive and accessible place or places. We have been working with other councils, developers, and really to anyone who would listen, to encourage them to think more inclusively. The vast majority of our focus as a community and as particularly local councils has been about accessibility. There is, as of recent times, there's an expanding into inclusion, and this is where we'd like to see and encourage and promote. The way we do this is we offer free advice and feedback on applications for funding, opinion or feedback and thoughts on concept designs. We also support through applications for funding through letters of support. And as of very recently, we partnered with Touched by Olivia Foundation, which is based in Sydney, has worked across the mainland, and they managed to develop just over 40 playgrounds, working with many different councils, particularly regional councils. The results have been astonishing, and we would like to see more of those down here in Tasmania. So we have direct access with Touched by Olivia. These guys have instigated the Everyone Can Play guidelines in New South Wales, which resulted in state government in New South Wales granting over $4 million to councils who would like to follow those guidelines. One last point I would like to make, by talking about inclusion, we are not talking about more budgets, we are not talking about more resources, and definitely we're not talking about going out on a limb. We're basically talking about how can we utilize the existing resources, existing thought, to be more inclusive. And rather than focusing on quantity, we want to focus on quality, and we want to focus on reach and appeal. So if you take Liberty Swing, for example, it's designed to be inclusive. However, by implementation, it is exclusive. It sits on the side of a playground inside a fenced area with a gate and a key nowhere to be seen. And, I have been traveling around the state for many, many years, and I am yet to see someone sitting on a wheelchair going on the Liberty Swing. So, however, fast forward to where we are today, there is a lot of options and opportunities for us to be more inclusive and genuinely having everyone at the same place. Whether it's a grandma going for with her grandchild, or someone on a wheelchair, or the carer who's pushing that wheelchair, or anything in between, a double pram or a wheelchair, we should be looking at all of these people. So today I will conclude, Mayor, by saying we are here with an open arm, open door to work with the Launceston City Council and any other council for that matter, in terms of how can we enhance your efforts to make sure any new place is an inclusive place open to intergenerational interaction that will make this city not just the best city to visit in Australia, as you rightly so been announced recently, but the best city also to live potentially in Australia, if not just in Tasmania. So thank you again for the opportunity. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you for putting the weather on for me as well.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Really appreciate that, and we wish you well in your work, because we all want an inclusive community, and thank you for the work that you're doing in that. And where we can work together, more than happy to do that as a council. So yeah, appreciate it, and all the best for the future.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to everyone. Cheers. Thanks.
So we go on to the public questions on notice are there with their answers, and then we go to public questions without notice.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Jim Dickinson, Riverside. I've got 3 questions on the redevelopment of the Albert Hall. And first up, I'd say that I love your presentation sketch. When I was a young lad, we used to call them helicopter sketches, because they're taken from up here looking down. Anyway, that's what we used to call them. And in actual fact, they work a lot better if you do them from ground level. Especially in this case, because the ground level is below floor level. So in actual fact, you'll be looking up at the extension, not down at it. Anyway, so I dare say in the last few months or whenever, the architects and the councillors have met, and what they are proposing they have discussed and put to you for consideration. And the fact that it is now at DA implies that you have accepted what they're recommending, and you're proceeding to go ahead, which almost implies that questions are a bit pointless because you've made up your decision, because you've advertised it, that this is what we want to do. Never mind. 3 questions today, because that's all the protocol allows. First one is obviously why nothing is being done to the actual hall of the Albert Hall. It's our main concert hall, apart from other functions of exhibitions and displays, but it's the main music hall for Launceston, and work needs to be done around the stage to increase the acoustics. It's the main venue in Launceston for the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra, and I think we're pretty lucky that it plays in Launceston several times a year, and the orchestra is world renowned, as you all maybe or no doubt know. So we've got this great orchestra. Would have thought with a major revamp of the Albert Hall, some work could have been done around the stage area to improve the acoustics. According to going through the...
Can you get to the questions, please? Get to the questions, please.
Yeah. So, well, fairly obviously the question is, why has nothing been included in the redevelopment to upgrade the Albert Hall?
I thought it had, but Shane, you got any further on that?
As provided, I must say, if you read Council's communication, it's clear that there's 2 stages before the external redevelopment, which include a heap of works in making the current hall more usable in terms of accessibility, acoustics, which we've engaged with stakeholders like the TSO in terms of determining how best to improve the utilisation of the existing hall.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously no problem having exhibitions there and...
Yeah, can you ask another question now, please?
Sorry?
Question, please. Next question.
Yeah, it wasn't a good answer, but I'm prepared to accept it because it's all I'm going to get. So, question 2, you've all got smartphones and probably little tablets in front of you. You might like to look up the plans. You can probably do that in 10 or 20 seconds. But in any case, the access to the new first floor, if you look at the drawings, otherwise it's a bit complicated, but it's on, after the meeting, drawing 95. You enter in through the new entrance. You have to walk the full length of the new entrance to basically the wall adjacent the Albert Hall, and then turn left. You have to walk 10 or 20 metres to what is actually, in fact, a dead end where you're proposing to put the stair to the first floor. Seems to me that's very poor design. You've got to walk in through, from the entrance through the foyer and along a passage. The other option is to go down the passage which gives you access to the toilets. So, in a brand new development, to walk upstairs, to go through a toilet corridor.
I'll take that as a statement. Your next
that's less than desirable. Sorry?
Sorry, your next question? I'll take that as a statement. So,
No, it's a question. Will you consider redesigning that? Because it's a very poor bit of planning for a brand new development. To get upstairs, you've got to go through all this tortuous...
I didn't see that, but we'll agree to disagree. Your third question, please.
And I don't appreciate your shoulder shrugs. Question 3, I'm drawing 96, if you want to check that out. But upstairs, there's a a new meeting room upstairs, which is smaller. Well, she wanted as a question, are you aware that upstairs the new meeting room is smaller than the existing one? The existing one also has a balcony overlooking the park, which gives you connection to the park. The new one doesn't have that. To the south of that room, on the drawings, you'll see there's a wasted space, probably 10 metres square or 10 metres by 10 metres, which at first floor level, that's almost the pride or the best spot of the whole development. You're elevated, you're on the southeast corner, great views over the park, and yet that's been left vacant, as it's a void. So if we're trying to improve things, once you get upstairs to have all that wasted space, you must agree that that's unfortunate or very poor planning. So the architects are obviously worried about that as well, because it's screened by a fake wall on the east elevation, which completely covers the fact that there's a void there. So, you know, in 2022, having fake screens and hiding things seems to be a very negative way to develop an $11 million project. So I hope that...
We'll take that on board as your third question, and we'll obviously with the DA that'll be considered once the DA comes to council. So thank you. Thanks for your question.
It's not really a DA question. It's a basic design question of the...
Yeah, but we'll consider that obviously as a council when it comes to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
No.
Thank you. Mayor's announcements. I've got just a few things, and one is to thank the Deputy for allowing me to take the time away. I really appreciated that, Deputy, so thank you for that. On Wednesday, the 30th of March, it's listed there that to attend the Mudlark Theatre's production, but that was postponed, so I obviously didn't attend that. And also, the 30th birthday cocktail event for Northern Occupational Support Services was postponed as well. But I did attend their afternoon function they had at the tail race, so you can substitute that for that. And then just to say it was absolutely fantastic to have a citizenship ceremony again and to see 70 new citizens from 20 different countries and to see the smiles on their faces, to hear their stories and to talk with them was absolutely fantastic and a great day. And thanks to the councillors, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mackenzie and priests that attended as well. It's good to see councillors attend these functions. Thank you. Councillor reports. Deputy.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to start, and I hope you'll allow this, by thanking you for your words and the 1 minute silence for past councillor, past Alderman Ted Sands. Ted made an amazing contribution to the life of the city, as is documented in the words that you've already released and said. No more so than with regard to the estuary and our own aquatic centre. And I know that staff at the aquatic centre were always highly entertained and engaged when Ted visited the site, which was on regular occurrence, because his passion and his advocacy for that facility was second to none. And such a shock to note his passing, and his contribution was certainly very valued around this table, and Mayor continued in the years that followed his service to our community formally, because many a person in the community would contact Ted in order to have some action or momentum on an issue. I'd also like to reference, Mayor, the wonderful Junction Arts Festival event that was held last Thursday evening, which you attended. A really great preview of the two activations that the Committee of Junction are presenting to our community this year, and I think testament to their planning and their foresight that despite the challenges that are present in large-scale events in this uncertain environment, that they are willing to work with Events Tasmania, work with the council, work with their other philanthropic supporters in order to be able to stage an event that's become synonymous with our city. So we look forward to both the May and the October iterations of Junction, and we look forward to celebrating all things Launceston when those events come our way.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thanks, Mayor. And again, just before I start on other things, I just want to acknowledge Ted and my friendship with Ted. Ted and I didn't agree on lots of things. I'd sit on that side of the desk and he'd sit on this side of the desk and he'd look over his half-moon glasses at me quite regularly with disdain with some of the things that I was saying, and likewise back the other way. But the one thing that I do remember fondly is Ted's passion for the city and for the people that were sort of needing to be represented. So he always did that with great vigour and commitment. So he certainly missed, and I've had the opportunity to catch up to him a few times since he departed the council, and we've had great chats over many things. Still tend to disagree on a number of things, but that's okay as well. But I'd just like to send my thoughts to Anne and Chelsea and the extended family as well, because he's a man who made his mark on Launceston, so I think I'll leave it there. I guess the other thing, which is not quite the same vein, but just as important, I'd also like to acknowledge Peter Gutman, who stepped down as Premier this week. I think whilst, regardless of political persuasions that we might or might not have, I think what he did through the pandemic to keep Tasmanians safe and I guess just lead us through a very difficult time in our history, I think is something that we shouldn't go unacknowledged by this council. Now, as I say, politics aside, I think he's done a wonderful job, and again, the sustainability of doing things at the level that he did it obviously became too much, and I'm sad that he's no longer leading the state, but I also wish him and his family well into their future and thank him for the time that he did spend in the roles that he did as Premier. This week, attended the 60th anniversary of the Tattlers Women's Writers Group in northern Tasmania, and I think what's significant about that, when we looked at some of the roll through of photos, going back into 1961-62, which is when they started, was the time when women were starting to come out and start to be heard. And it was quite interesting that this group of women have managed to continue to write their stories and involve themselves in this community for 60 years. And I think when you look at some of the photos that were there, you say, gee, this was bold stuff when they came out and did it. And to last for 60 years in something like that, I think is a pretty fantastic effort. And the writings of some of those, and there are some books that are written by the Tattlers Club. So if you wanted to go and find out, I'm sure if you went online you could find those and go and read some of the stories. And again, like the Mayor said, the citizenship ceremony on Wednesday, we're in a new location. I'll be pleased to get back to the Albert Hall and its new acoustics, Mayor, in due course. But down at the tram sheds earlier in the week, I think was just fantastic, and I always get blown away with the costuming that so many of our new citizens wear to those things, sort of just light and colour, and their genuine love of becoming citizens of Australia. I think it's just something that oozes out of them when they go up on stage, and you see them afterwards, they're just so happy. And I know the Mayor gives his time freely to take photos with them, and I know they're so excited about that as well. So fantastic things. I'll just draw any council that has nothing to do between 10 and 12 on a Friday, the Northern Suburbs Community Centre at their Rochely shed, having a coffee and chat out there, so members of the community can come in, and as we're members of the community, you're warmly welcome for a donation for a nicely made cup of coffee by a barista, and usually some homemade treats as well. So I just welcome anybody to come out and join us at the shed on a Friday morning.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and like the others, I will also perhaps say a few words about Ted. Ted and Am are my next door neighbours, where my mother-in-law lives in a unit in Kings Meadows, but I met Ted before that in my role as the chairman of South Launceston Community Development, when Ted would come to our local community meetings and was a great man of action. And my biggest memory is Ted at about 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning deciding that the footpaths in Kings Meadows were so dirty they had to be cleaned. So Ted was out there with the hose, cleaning them off himself. And I guess that really said everything about Ted as a man of action. Like Hugh, at times Ted and I would agree to disagree, but we always got on well, And in fact, I only saw him Wednesday week ago. There he was cutting down some trees, as you would expect Ted to be doing, because Ted was always a man of doing things, and it is exceptionally sad. I was very shocked to hear on Monday night that Ted had passed away. So my thoughts are with Anne and Chelsea, who both live in the complex of units where my mother-in-law does. Moving on to my council roles, I was very happy to chair the very first Launceston Transport Committee in its new iteration. That happened last week. It was well attended, and I guess will really help us drive our transport strategy and the various aims that we have for the city to continue to evolve our transport in this city. And I'm really pleased and somewhat surprised by the take-up of the free buses. Free buses in Launceston has only gone up about 9% in patronage. I've done my bit to contribute to that. I hope others have taken advantage of the free buses who sit around this table to perhaps do that. But there also are other means of transport that our Transport Committee is pushing, including things like the e-scooters. I will point briefly to the Newstead College Association AGM that I attended as a council representative. They have 520 full-time students, and at least 20 of those arrive every day on one of the e-scooters, which is exactly the process that we want. That's 20 cars that aren't being used. There's probably a few bus trips not being included as well, but it is actually great to see e-scooters being used, not as recreation, but in fact as a normal means of transport. That's probably really about all I want to say on the transport aspect. I did attend as the chairman of the Launceston Safer Communities Partnership meeting yesterday as well. That meant that I couldn't attend the New Citizenship meeting that was happening out at Inveresk. And the Safer Communities Partnership has been looking at ways that it can help make the streets safer, anti-hooning. We heard about some hooning that was happening down in the Seaport Riverbend Park area, but we weren't able to address the homelessness situation. That isn't part of our charter, but it is something that it does affect how people feel as far as their safety is concerned. So I guess from that point of view, I'll leave it there that we still have an issue with homelessness in this city. It has been addressed, and I know there are things going on at another level, and hopefully we might hear some more reports on that. But it's certainly something that people have felt unsafe at times with what's been going on in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor reports? Councillor Priest.
Thank you, Mayor. I too attended various other events that councillors have previously mentioned. However, on the 31st of April, I was lucky enough to attend the opening of the new family planning facility at 93 Patterson Street. It's a fantastic use for the building. It's fantastic that it's been moved closer to town. It's more accessible. It has steps and ramps into the building. It will be far easier to catch public transport to that area to attend appointments there. The lovely pressed tin ceiling has been managed to be retained. It looks spectacular in that, that building, and it has lovely education areas for training of their staff and more consulting rooms. So it's a fabulous venue. So a great thing for Launceston to have in the city now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Soward.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to very briefly thank you and other councillors for their words on former Councillor Sands and pass my condolences on. All I wanted to add to what's been said was that one of the things I think which is really rich in public life is when people bring a diversity of experiences to the table. For those who knew Councillor Sands, he had a very diverse background in the work and social and community things he was involved in. And I think that adds a lot to discussions and decisions when people have done all of those things. So just wanted to add my voice to what is a big loss and a very sad time for his family. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to questions by councillors. Councillor Spencer.
Thanks, Mayor. This week I went down to Royal Park and spoke to the gentleman at the juice bar. and he mentioned to me about the toilets that are locked. A lot of tourists ask where the nearest toilets are. Most of the time, early in the morning, those toilets in Royal Park are locked. Getting back to the homeless people, is it possible to have those toilets open 24/7? I've checked the toilets out when I was there the other day. They are fairly well vandal-proof, apart from the seats. It's all stainless steel, heavy-duty stainless, all tiled, recessed lights. I think the second option is the people that have got the locker keys, we could give them a key for that toilet. And another option is it possible to make the shower off the end of that block? It wouldn't take that much work to do it. But as far as the vandalism, there's not much to be vandalised in there apart from the toilet seats. The rest is stainless, heavy duty, tiled, recessed lights. And like I mentioned at the workshop last week, I'd supply a floodlight that we could put on the existing light pole there to shine back on the toilets. Very simple. I don't know if Shane could comment on it.
No, thank you. Look, as you mentioned it last week already, and others have mentioned it before, the council staff are following through on that to see what can be done, and we'll hear from them, I'm sure, in the next week or two about what's the possibilities and how it can best be done. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Does the council have any meaningful data about homelessness in Launceston, either the causes or the numbers? And if not, are we able to procure such information?
CEO.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So the council itself doesn't hold information, but we obviously liaise closely and have done over the last 6 or 7 months with the providers, and there is various data available, but it depends on the particular data you're seeking. So perhaps if you want to qualify that in terms of what information you would like to see is available, and certainly we, through that group, can come back to you with respect to to the availability.
Well, I suppose to qualify that, I suppose I'd like to know, as I suppose many people would, whether the amount of people involved is increasing, as I suppose anecdotally, people might think it is. And if so, obviously it's a problem that is not going to go away and, will cause more issues over time. Okay, a few more questions, if I may, Mayor. I note with the recent development of the North Inverness car park that there's no longer a dump point there for RV vehicles. Is that the case? And if so, is there an alternative place for RV vehicles to use?
Shane, can you answer that? We'll take it on notice.
The RV dump point has been removed as part of the works, and staff are looking at alternate sites. Of course, we need to be mindful too that there's a competitive neutrality issue in providing dump points as well. But we're working through that.
Thank you.
Thank you. While I'm talking about that car park, do we have any meaningful figures regarding the use of that car park and therefore the revenue from the North Inverness car parking facility?
We'll take that on notice. No, haven't got it now, obviously.
Yep. Another question in regards to the money that council does charge when subdivisions take place. Does the council provide an account of the amount of money charged and where that money is directed? I suppose, is there a direct correlation between the income and the expenditure of that money?
CEO.
Yeah, certainly the money is accounted separately, and there's and the CFO can probably qualify that more than I. And council actually makes decisions with respect to when that money is brought forward through the budget. But are you able to answer that, Paul?
Or add to it?
Probably not a lot, but it's separated and accounted for separately. It's just a matter of, I suppose, in an overall budget. In terms of some of the recreational parks that they'll have to put aside money for that, they're separated and kept, so it's like a reserve, if you like. So it's all accounted for every year, the same way.
Yeah, I'm sure it's accounted for. I suppose then it doesn't go into consolidated revenue, is the case then. Okay, thank you very much. And finally, I note that some councils make the results of voting that's taken in closed council public. What procedures would need to take place for the Launceston Council to make public the results of votes that are taken in closed council?
CEO.
Need to look into that. I don't believe it's lawful to be doing that, so we'd need to check what you're referring to. So maybe if you could provide some more information around what you've seen happening, and we can certainly take that under advisement. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, we go to committee reports. The Cataract Gorge Reserve Advisory Committee. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Walker. Seconder, Councillor Harris. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Walker?
I do, thank you, Mayor. If you'll give me the grace of a minute to catch up to where we are. The Council Cataract Gorge Reserve meeting on Monday, on Tuesday the 8th of February. Certainly one area that the committee has been focused on, and more so the staff council officers have been working on, is the environmental management of weeds, and as such, weed management plan being developed for the gorge, and external consultants who have been working through a plan to manage these things. And I suppose anyone who's dealt with weeds, whether it be their backyard or, you know, involved in various community groups, knows that there's a good reason why these weeds spread, and timing is everything. Identification and preparedness and planning, they're all the types of things that are going into that management plan. And I suppose that would be the main part of the Cataract Gorge committee meeting held last month. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. No further. Any other councillor wish to speak? Can I put the motion? Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. So 13.2, Culture Advisory Committee, moved the Deputy Mayor. Seconded, Councillor Mackenzie. Do you wish to speak to it, Deputy Mayor? No? Councillor Mackenzie? Any other councillor wish to speak to it? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present, so that is carried as well. So we go on to 13.3, Launceston Access Advisory Committee, moved Councillor Dawkins. Seconded, Councillor Mackenzie. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Dawkins?
Thank you. It was indeed a spirited conversation. We invited the providers of the e-scooters along, and obviously they were well prepared and well practiced in this forum, because clearly every time an e-scooter trial is rolled out, or in fact just implementation, this is a group who have a significant interest from a couple of perspectives, but significantly from their ability to be able to move safely around their community. So, to be honest, the e-scooter providers were fantastic. They answered every question really clearly. They gave people confidence that there were pathways to education and to being able to note the issues that they were having. I feel like everybody went away from the meeting with a sense that they've been heard, which I think is exceptionally important. And of course, the other perspective is from the perspective of mobility. You know, these e-scooters could be available to people with differing abilities as well. So I think there's more work to be done in this space, but I would say that everybody present felt very confident at the end of it, and it could have gone either way. So it was really promising for our community. We have a reduced budget to work with for our implementation phase. So I know every committee does, and I know every department does, and I understand that, but this is something that we have to accept. Yes, at this particular period, we won't be able to implement every single strategy, but, you know, I'd hate to be here in 2 years' time, if I am fortunate enough to be having the same conversation. You know, we still want that 0.5 access officer. We still want more for this part of council. We want more for our community from a council perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, I just want to stand up just to endorse and acknowledge that workshop with Access Committee. I think this is Access Committee working in a way that's fantastic, which means they all have an opportunity to challenge things, because I know, as we've read in the paper every day, there have been a number of access issues raised by the community, and what better forum for you to actually have it and have the questions answered, and by the sounds of things in a positive way, which means we can move forward with this. So all of the security and safety aspects that are needing to be dealt with in regard to the access ability, I think it's fantastic it's coming back through that forum, and then we can be a conduit for things that can be improved.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to the previous speakers. I was a little surprised to see the notation with regard to the access framework, because really clearly when we endorsed the document and we appreciated the work that had to be done, the work does not sit with the committee. The work sits across this whole organisation. So we need to be very sure that our commitment to access and our commitment to the document that we endorsed as a council is actually just supported and endorsed and championed by the committee. It's not their job to achieve every single action that we as a council have determined is a priority. So I trust that through the committee, through the officers, to the general managers, there is a renewed commitment to ensure that the implementation rests with all areas of the organisation, not just with a volunteer committee.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Dawkins, wish to close? No, I've put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. So 13.4, audit panel meeting. Moved Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Walker. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor?
Look, I think 13, unfortunately, because of, I think, a meltdown in IT in Tasmania, our meeting got changed, so I didn't actually get to attend this one because I was away. But I think we've got a new audit chair and a new audit committee member that joined the audit committee at the last meeting, and I guess this is really just outlining the depth of things that the audit committee actually attend to in their regular meetings. So that's there for information as much as anything.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, anything to add?
And the information being that the favourable result of the December quarter of the underlying deficit being, I suppose, the most notable. I note with interest that increased revenue from Launceston Aquatic and the Waste Centre, I suppose because of a change in behaviour of people over the last little period. The note that the amount would have been greater if the Patterson Street Central and North Inverse car parks were operational.
So we're on 14.1?
Oh, sorry, I've moved on.
Sorry, 13.4, sorry, I've moved on too.
My apologies, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers for 13.4 audit panel meeting? No. Councillor Mackenzie wish to close. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. So 14.1, council workshop reports. Moved Councillor Dawkins, seconded Councillor Harris. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Dawkins?
Thank you. These briefings are so important. We learn so much depth in all of the issues that council officers are placed before, but I think none more important than the homeless locker trial update. Really, really interesting to see how that trial's working out, and so important that it's supported by council. There's been questions today along this, so you can see that this is something that has really grasped the community's interest, that we can see there are more people who are suffering or experiencing housing insecurity at the moment, and of course council working in this space to support and to understand what the community needs is extremely important.
Thank you. Councillor Harris. Any other councillor wish to speak? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. Then we move on to 19.1, financial reports to council. Move Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Walker. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Mackenzie?
I think Councillor Walker's already started on this one, but Well, I did want to make a few comments. And I think it's really important to note, I guess, financially, how well we have continued to operate in relation to our normal operations, where you can see an increase in rates, which are rates variations for work that's being done on properties, and our user fees and charges have gone significantly through the roof on the basis of a lot of activity going on in and around Launceston. But I think you just need to understand the flip side of this, and I just want to go back to you look at employee and say, okay, great, we're 1.6 million, or I can't read my writing, $1.9 million in favourable variance in employment. And everybody might say that's a terrific situation to be in, but I think what we need to fully understand is we're delivering huge top-line improvement with less people. And it's really, I know there's a lot of pressure on the employees of the council in relation to what we're doing, and therefore sometimes we get a bit frustrated about things not getting done. Part of that reason is because our resourcing is not quite where it needs to be. So just by acknowledging it's a really good number from the point of view of budgets, it's not necessarily a really good number in relation to the sustainability of the way that we actually operate as a council. So I think it's pointed to do that, but I think that clearly the business is being managed well, despite some of the letters that we receive. But and I think that their performance in relation to budget, I know that we were coming off our sustaining aspects post-COVID and expecting to run at deficits for 2 or 3 years and winding down, but clearly the wind down's happening a lot better. I think that's because, and the Mayor uses this comment, because this is one of the best cities in the country, if not the best city in the country, and people want to be here. And therefore the activity that's going on in Launceston is really shown out by the top-line activity that's going on. But I also just want to spare a thought for our employees who are actually being asked to sort of work pretty hard, where we're perhaps not quite at the numbers we'd like to be.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, anything to add to what you've already said?
I only seconded the motion to say that I have nothing further to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Mackenzie wish to close. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand, and that is all councillors present. That is carried. So 19.2, Audit Panel Charter. Move Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Walker. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Mackenzie?
This shows you all the wonderful things that we do.
Thank you. Councillor Walker? No? No other councillor wish to speak to it? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand, and that is all councillors present. That is carried. Now I have a motion that we go into closed council. Move Councillor Soward, second to Councillor Dawkins. All those in favour, raise your hands. We go into closed council. Councillor Spencer, are you in favour or? Yeah, that's it. All councillors voted for it. That is carried. We now go to closed.